Okay. I'm calling to order the Board of Public Safety. It's a regular meeting, Wednesday, December 16th at 6 p.m. All members are here except Rafi. Forgot Rafi's last name.
Hassan.
Rafi Hassan. Okay. And we have a, this is my last meeting, and then Shruti Raina will start in January. We have a lot of guests in our meeting, and we will have time for short 3-minute public comments at the end of the meeting. We will not address the comments, we will just listen. So we're going to start our meeting with, first we're going to add an agenda item, and that is the meeting times for the next year, 2021. So we'll do that right after we approve the minutes. So I'd like to make a request for someone to move for the approval of last month's minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Luis and a second from Maquiba. I'm just gonna go with the order that I see you all on my screen. So Susan?
Approve.
Maquiba?
Approve.
Kim?
Approve.
Luis?
Approve.
Motion is approved and the meeting minutes are adopted. I have a question for Chris Wheeler, and that is whether we need to on our meeting times for next year so that they can be published in the paper at the start, or can we defer that until next month so that Rafi and Shruti can look at their calendars too?
Let's just go ahead and get the dates set now so that we can get the notice out. I'd feel more comfortable with that.
Okay, and then if they have to be amended later.
That's right.
Okay. I guess my first proposal would be to just leave them. Well, maybe Luis, do you know whether you have evening teaching responsibilities?
I do not.
Okay. Then maybe we just assume that we keep the meeting at the same time as they currently are.
That'd be great.
Okay, and this would be, okay.
Yeah, and I think the benefit is leaving time for an executive session before.
Okay.
We have
Okay.
There's a comment on the chat.
Yeah, Shruti, maybe, is Shruti able, or can you unmute her?
I would have her unmuted so that she can weigh in since she's
Yeah.
going to be a board member. She's already appointed. She just doesn't start until January.
She should be able to unmute herself as a co-host.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone.
Okay. We try to meet at 6 p.m. or later, and that was originally because of Kim's schedule because she was driving from Indy. Now we're working from home, but 6 o'clock is still a good time, or you said Wednesday later. It doesn't have to be Wednesday necessarily either.
I'm teaching an evening class just next semester. That's Wednesdays starting at 7 p.m.
I think, could we change it back to Tuesdays?
At 6?
Yeah.
I can do that. That works.
Okay. Let's assume Tuesdays, the third Tuesday at 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And then if the room that we've always used is available, that would be the room that we would prefer. And we'll assume that probably the first half of the year will still be over Zoom.
Yeah, because I know I'm working from home completely next semester. The university, I believe, is still all remote.
Do we actually have to approve that formally, Chris, like with a vote?
You don't need a motion on that or a vote.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to fire department business, and we'll talk about the report on monthly statistics and training.
Okay, so operational statistics, 43% of our run volume so far this year has been rescue and EMS. That is the highest percentage. We've had 3,262 calls to the city limits, 453 calls to Indiana University, which puts us around 3,800 calls and on pace real close to what we had last year, which is really unusual considering the year that we've had and the students being gone for so long. So looks like with Indiana University, of those calls, 453, 69% of those were rescue EMS. Our response time goals, our response goal is to be within on 90% of the time within 4 minutes of the call, the first arriving unit. We're at 81%. We have talked about this in the past. I think a lot of that has to do with traffic patterns and road construction, things like that. So as those things start progressing, maybe we'll see that percentage go up a little bit. 97% of the time we're within 8 minutes within the city limits. We're right on pace of our goal of 98% of the time. Public engagement statistics and prevention, so inspections and code enforcement. Obviously, this year has not been a face-to-face type of year. No pun intended, but 15% of the progress for our goals is all we're at. Facebook's been up, social media has been up a little bit, and we try to use that platform for outreach, but still very disappointed as far as getting the inspections out there, especially with all the new construction. Training and education, the actual what we sent in, there was a glitch. We are real close to being on pace for our training this year. We had to use a platform, a software platform that we didn't foresee in 2019 as being something we were going to use so much, but considering what happened this year, it really came in handy for all of our troops to be able to sit down at a computer and still be able to actively engage in training. And that is my statistics report.
Okay, any letters of appreciation or commendation?
I don't see any for this month.
General business.
So general business, we're down 5 firefighters. We had since February, we had 4 COVID cases, positive COVID cases. And what we saw was what Dr. Fauci was predicting around the holidays, and that was a real sharp uptick in cases, not only in the city and the county, but also our department. We've had 7 cases this month. About half of those are scheduled to be back to work this week. It just hit us, and it hit us quick. So it's something that we've been monitoring really close and really trying to do the best we can with what we have. So we feel like we have good policies and protocols in place, and we've done a really nice job the whole year keeping that rate down and the incident rate down for our department, especially when we have firefighters being in closed quarters, and I'm not sure if the weather has anything to do with it either, but I think We went from 5%, I think, in the county to about 13%, and it affected us as well. So, and that's what I have for that.
Do you have any upcoming large expenditures that we should be aware of?
So we are encumbering quite a bit of money for purchases and projects and contracts for 2021, but it's going to be used for, or it's going to be 2020 money, including, for instance, we have a ladder truck that's not going to be here. Took a little over 400 days to build, and it'll be here sometime next month. But obviously, we can't pay for it until we have it, and it's been checked in and all that, and approved by our mechanics and things. But we are using that 2020 money, so you'll see those encumbrances. You'll see a lot, probably to the tune of about $1.6–1.7 million coming in. With a 1 1/4, 1.3 on a ladder truck. So that'll be coming in purchases for 2021.
In the next 2 months, you think?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then we'll move on to, is there any other fire department business?
None to speak of.
Okay. Then we'll have the chief's certification of payroll.
I approve. That's correct.
Yes,
Okay.
it's correct.
Okay. Then let's move on to police department business, the report on monthly statistics and training.
Okay, just going to hit the highlights here. Looks like most of the statistics are lower. November, we had 3,446 calls for service. As you can see, that is down from nearly 4,000 the month before. And not only did I attribute the uptick once the students return, but I think we can also attribute the downward trend to the students leaving around the Thanksgiving time, which probably is attributed to that. Going to adult arrests, it's a couple of pages down. We're skipping most of the graph pages, mostly because I have to read them sideways since that's how they appear on my computer. But the adult arrest, again, down significantly, and also juvenile referrals down significantly. And on a positive note, domestic violence cases stayed the same or pretty close to the same from October, but they are down from this time last year. UCR hate crimes, the end of December will be another end of the quarterly reporting period. So we should have something by the January meeting. And while we're on the topic of statistics specifically, once again, for those board members, well, even outgoing, Susan, if you would like to contribute, once again, I'm opening up to the group, what is it that you want to see from us? And we can certainly create the statistics or the information that you feel that you need as board members to come from us. So with 2021, if that's a good time to start, even if we start looking at different things until we get a report that actually meets what you feel like your needs are to know about what we do, by all means, please let us know, and we will certainly create that for you. So onward to the narrative page. Crime trends, major cases, theft series of delivered packages around the Henderson and Hillside area. We also had an uptick in the theft of catalytic converters. What's not on here, and I think I talked about last month, we talked about the homicide case from 1600 block of North Willis that took place. I believe at this time last month, I talked about one individual was outstanding suspect from that. That individual has in fact been arrested since last month, which is also addressed in the letters of commendations, which we'll eventually get to. Training is down a little bit, 600 plus hours. We had one officer go through an instructor development course. As we talked about, I think the chief mentioned last month that we got a new virtual training system. We had 2 officers complete the train the trainer component for that. We continued to finish up our mandatory training for the department, and then K9 and dive team had their regular training. Unfortunately, we continue with our trend of not having very many community engagement events. As you can see, we only had about a little over an hour with one officer involved in that, and I was talking to Cub Scouts at Sherwood Oaks Christian Church on November 3rd. We have nothing for upcoming community engagement events. I assume that that trend will also continue. And then we're down to the police social worker. Total number of referrals was 22. Total number of police social worker contacts was 289. And you'll see the asterisk there is yet another record-breaking month for the police social worker. So you can see some of the highlights there, summary of Melissa's activity, and that is assisted someone with accessing virtual AA meetings, assisted a client with getting pets safely housed so she could get inpatient mental health treatment, and assisted a family with accessing youth programs and scholarships for those programs. And then below that, you see the 28 calls for service for the neighborhood resource specialist, and the breakdown of the types of calls that they dealt with. And that's it on stats.
It's interesting that you mentioned that the stats for domestic abuse or calls were down, because things that I've been reading are that the calls are down, but probably the incidences are up. We're just not hearing about them during COVID. So I just wanted to make that comment.
And I would agree with you, and I think that the experts would tell you that much like sexual abuse, domestic violence is probably in the same category, where it is one of those, or probably one of many categories that are highly underreported anyway. But we can only go with the information that's provided to us. But I think your comment is exactly right on.
Okay, let's move on to letters of appreciation and commendation.
We have three. The first one would be for Sergeant Sean Hines and Officers Jacqueline Diltz, Andrew Dawson, and Garrett Mitchell. And this is an individual who wrote to the chief about an incident that took place on Indiana 37, where, at least on the business loop, talked about debris fell off of a trailer and struck his vehicle. He called 911. The operator was very calm, and the first officers that were on the scene were very professional, compassionate, making sure the individual was not injured. And in any event, he was very appreciative of their efforts. The second one is related to the North Willis event where the second suspect was captured. And this is an individual with intelligence in Indianapolis. And that's where the individual was actually arrested, was out of Indianapolis. But what this individual talks about is the collaborative effort that went into the capture of that individual. It was a peaceful surrender by the individual once he was Indianapolis SWAT basically surrounded the house, did a call out, and the individual came out. But again, it was just the monumental effort by a multitude of agencies that went into this and successfully made an arrest on the murder suspect there. And finally, the third one is from someone else who was involved in an accident. And this is commending Officer Paul Post for the courteous response and just how well he did in responding to that accident that took place on November 12th. So.
Chief, could I ask you quickly, on the first letter, do we know the name of the officer? It says that they did the first letter, the near impalement on Indiana 37. It says that they didn't catch a name.
Yes,
and they wanted to know.
Yeah, I mentioned that at the beginning of it, that it was for Sergeant Sean Hines, Officers Jacqueline Diltz, Andrew Dawson, and Garrett Mitchell. So 3 officers and a supervisor responded.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have general business?
I just wanted to kind of update on COVID related matters. We have luckily only had one officer test positive so far. That's been several weeks ago. And we've had a few dispatchers who have tested positive. That too has been a few weeks ago. So we've increased our mitigation efforts by keeping divisions separated, keeping officers kind of separated from other officers so that we don't spread anything, and increase the cleaning and the ability or the availability of cleaning supplies and hand sanitizer and that stuff for the officers and for the vehicles to try to minimize any kind of catching of COVID. So far, we've been pretty lucky where we haven't had widespread spread of that. Other general business, I just wanted to briefly touch on the events at Seminary Park. The direction came from the mayor's office to clean the park up and remove the tents. We had been working with the individuals who had been staying there for a couple of weeks prior to that, warning people that this was going to happen. The Wednesday night when it did happen, we took our DROs and we had outreach workers from Centerstone and our department, and went down there, and we had already prearranged housing for anybody who might have been interested at Wheeler. One person took advantage of that. Stride Center took in 3 people for the evening, and 2 people got in their car and drove away, and 1 person carried his stuff off. The city approached this from a health and safety standpoint. There were propane heaters inside tents that people were using. There were, when we got there, there were some burning candles in an unattended tent. So there were some safety issues and concerns that the city had. All of the property was removed and taken to parks and returned to people the next day. Shalom Center also collected a lot of the property the next day to make sure that it was returned to the people in the park. Several of the tents were unoccupied. They were used, it looked like, for storage. And so, again, we've had several meetings since then, working on ways to address people sleeping in tents in the park so that that doesn't have to happen. I think we are making some progress towards that, involving a lot of different social service agencies. Just so you know, there were enough shelter beds for people that night. It's people decided they didn't want to take advantage of that. So that's an individual choice. That's something that we respected. But I just wanted to kind of brief you kind of on what happened that night, and where that decision came from. And
Chief,
yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish out.
Go ahead. I have no more general business.
Okay. I just had a follow-up question to that. So I'm curious, because a lot of people did reach out to me, and I'm on my phone, so that's why I'm looking down, because I have horrible internet service. So excuse me as I'm looking down and stuff like that. But a couple people did reach out to me asking me, hey, why did it, kind of go like this or whatnot. So I'm just curious about what happens in the future. Like, say someone is new to Bloomington and had no idea that this new approach was taken, and someone else puts up a tent in Seminary Park, not unknowing of any of the new permits and stuff like that. What happens to those individuals?
So it's not new, the prohibition of camping or sleeping in the parks at night. That's been a park rule for many years. People are allowed to put up a tent during the daytime hours that the park is open, but after hours, after the park is closed, those need to be removed. So nothing has changed. However, because of the health and safety issues, the decision was made to clear the park last Wednesday because of those concerns about health and safety. So if someone would go there tonight, they would be warned that, this is not allowed. You'll need to remove your tent. And then if they don't do that, then the city would come in and remove it.
And then just a follow up to that, then someone would let them know the resources where they can, hey, there's a resource here. So I know
Yes.
that the DRLs, okay.
Yes,
People will be
is
aware of
something
the,
a lot. Our DROs, the outreach workers from the various social service agencies also pass on resources to anyone who might be experiencing homelessness to try to get them housed somewhere safely.
and as far as we know, there are rooms available for people in isolation shelters.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you define again DRO for the public?
It's our downtown resource officer. It's our unit that deals a lot with people who have substance use issues or maybe experiencing homelessness or have some kind of mental health issues.
Real quick, Chief. And no one was placed in a jail cell at all, or
Right.
anyone placed in jail?
No one was arrested.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, I think the meeting was poor reporting or something, because there was a real misunderstanding about what that park board meeting was about. And even I thought when that meeting was over, I took it to mean, oh, they're just going to allow the tents to be there 24/7.
There was, I think, some poor communication that happened, and that's why I think there was a lot of misunderstandings.
Chief, could I ask you, you mentioned Centerstone and other places that collaborated with you on that day, and I'm assuming before.
Yes.
Was Shalom Forrest Gilmer, was he a part of that collaboration at all?
So we have weekly meetings with the different outreach workers from Centerstone and Wheeler, and I'm not sure who else comes. Shalom had not been to one of those recently, so they didn't participate because they hadn't been at any of the meetings to know what was going on. Since then, they have started attending again. But we had assistance from both Centerstone and from Wheeler Mission to work with people that night to get them housing if they chose to do that.
And Chief, you mentioned that if people were to start camping again, I think you said tonight, that they would be told they couldn't and then they would be removed. Is that your way of saying there's actually police stationed at the park right now?
No, there's no police stationed at the park, but it is patrolled. And again, the no camping, no sleeping in the park after hours has been a rule that's been in place for many years, and it is being enforced.
And this is one of those moments the national conversation about defunding police, right? Thinking about, and we've talked about it here, the optics are just not good. And, I don't know how you do it differently. I mean, I understand the point of view, the idea that it's been played, the regulation, and that we enforce it as we enforce all others. But then for the police to have acted like that and to have to be the ones doing this, right? Is there no other way we can do this that doesn't involve you guys? That's the conversation that came to mind to me. And again, I'm not placing blame on you. You do what they told you to do. We can talk about that surely, but more generally, the idea that should you be the one, right? If we talk about social workers, we talk about the DRO, we talk about doing things differently, and that's something that we'll be talking. I'm assuming in the future we'll be talking about. I don't know how to do it differently, to be honest with you. I don't.
I think one of the other things was the outreach workers and the DROs talked to everyone, and the pictures that were taken were of after everybody had left, and the officers were just cleaning up things, and the officers were not there when they were making arrangements for the people who were there. They came in after everybody had left to basically gather up all of the stuff that was left and put it on trailers and get it to the Parks Department.
And just a follow up to that, and you mentioned that everyone's whoever information was taken down, they were able to receive their materials, their structures, their tents.
The Parks
For the most
Department
part.
had it at their operations center, and I think by later Thursday afternoon, all of the property had been returned to people.
Chief Decon, I'm interested in learning what the DROs and the outreach workers, what were they hearing from the displaced people as to their reason not going to the shelter or the other?
So that's a really good question. So some of the people had been suspended or banned from shelters, which I have raised that issue numerous times over the last couple of weeks with the shelter providers in our community. I am told that the reason that they are banned is because they are violent. But again, the population that was there, these are like some of the most difficult people to deal with. And I had expressed my concern with the providers about, well, perhaps maybe we need to work harder than trying to figure out a way to not ban people. Because, for instance, the 3 people that went to the Stride Center is a 23 and a half hour a day unit. You can't stay there more than 24 hours. There was one person who left who wanted to get into shelter that couldn't because they had been banned from doing so. So that creates a problem. So I do think that since this happened, that the shelters are willing to re-examine some of their suspension policies. I understand that they have to worry about the greater good. You know, if there's one problem person, they have to worry about the other 30 people who aren't. But it's also, I think, I don't believe it's appropriate to just kind of throw your hands up and say, well, sorry, you can't come here. So, we go through lots of de-escalation training. I'm sure there are anger management specialists that could probably help with training to try to de-escalate some of the problems people might be causing so that they can stay in shelter. So that, I think, I'm hoping we will make some headway with that, because some of these people they weren't interested in going anywhere else. They didn't want to go to shelter. So people have a variety of reasons for that, but some of them didn't have a choice because they had been banned or suspended from shelters.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious if some of them were concerned about the risk of COVID-19 entering into a shelter facility.
That's a good question. And so I know that Dana, who's the director of Wheeler Mission, has frequently talks about all of the mitigation efforts that they take to make sure people are safe. And they have experienced very low numbers in that particular shelter. So I know that they are spreading people out. They have reduced the numbers of people that they allow, and they are taking a lot of measures to clean and sanitize to lower the likelihood of spread. There is an isolation shelter that has been in operation for several months that has a pretty good bed capacity. As of this morning, there was no one in that shelter. So one of the things that I think may happen is they have 30 plus beds, I think, for the isolation shelter. And they are trying to figure out a way that they can use some of those beds for people who might be at a higher risk for COVID, or who are older and might be placed at a higher risk to try to get them shelter. We're moving into the time of year where it's getting very cold. One of the concerns I know from the shelters is pneumonia and frostbite. Some people, I think, believe that to be a bigger risk than COVID. I do know in attending a lot of the meetings, I said this earlier, that the positivity rate amongst that population is relatively low. And so I know it's been brought up a lot. People were concerned about that. The CDC guidelines, the CDC guidelines kind of addressed like warmer weather also. And so as we move into winter, it's getting into the 20s now. There is a greater chance for people who might be intoxicated, passing out, getting frostbite. We have had people in the winter before who have died because of they basically froze. So that is a big concern. And I know the shelters are taking great strides to keep the chances of someone catching COVID in a shelter to a minimum. And according to them, a lot of their efforts are working because there are really low numbers. So.
And again, I just want to reiterate that the isolation shelters are with Shalom Center. Is that correct?
I believe it's part of that and
okay.
Run by them. They manage it, I believe.
Okay. So I'm curious about, so if someone has a concern about the operation, would they go to you or should they go to the mayor? Like, how does it work for people that have, that really want to figure out why this decision was made? And who should they go to?
We got our direction from the mayor's office.
Okay. And then, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that was my earlier point. I hope, and it's a terrible issue. It's an issue that I hope Bloomington tackles hard, and I hope it tackles it humanely, surely. As we think about it and talk about it, right? We're talking to the police chief about issues that don't strike will figure it out.
You bring up a really good point. I've been involved in a lot of effort over people. One of the that I think that there's distrust amongst them too. And so hopefully some of the meetings I have been in since then and conversations I've had, that seems to want to be the goal of everyone, to come together to work on a solution that works for everybody. Again, there's lots of different agencies doing similar work. And so, one of the things that happen, as I mentioned this earlier, we meet a couple times a week with outreach workers from different agencies, and not all of those people are participating. So they don't necessarily know what everybody's doing because they don't come to these meetings. And so it's just, I think the communication between everyone has been a problem in the past, and I'm hopeful that that's something that we can realize and work on so that everybody comes together for the good of the people that need it.
Chief, isn't that the mission of the Bloomington Homeless Coalition?
Well, they're one organization doing their thing. They're not really involved in, from what I understand about them, they don't do sheltering. So we've got a couple of different shelters that do that, but everybody kind of is doing their own thing. There's lots of people out there doing stuff. It's just they're all doing their own thing. And it would just be helpful, I think, if everybody came together to discuss what they're doing, because there's lots of duplication. And so we need to get everybody at the table on the same page to talk about this, to come up with something. You're exactly right, Luis. This isn't an area that is in my purview, but it always kind of gets dumped in my lap. And
I agree, Kim. I think when you say different groups coming together, I came to a couple of meetings because I just really wanted to get myself immersed. So I've been to the meeting last Tuesday where it was over 250 people on the call with the Parks and Recs, and I was hearing from individuals, hearing from community members, and hearing from also individuals that are experiencing homelessness, actually speaking on their own behalf. and just like really hearing the move of our community. And I would agree that if we had this opportunity to come together, because I'm a social worker, and I think that it's important for us to figure out a way to come with compassion. I think I was really just taken aback, especially hearing from the passion and hearing from our grassroots organizers. Chief, you know, I'm a grassroots organizer myself. So hearing from these individuals, hearing their own stories about how they're doing things, made me think, like, how are people really working together, or are they not working together? And then it's always like, well, the police did this. I'm like, but did they? If it would have been like a coalition like built to work collectively, perhaps police didn't have to be there to help move tents and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if we could have, I don't know. I just really hope that something comes out of this as where we work together, where perhaps stuff like this, the police don't have to be involved with it, right? So I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of ranting.
Any other comments about what went on at the park, at Seminary Park? We are going to move on then to whether there are any large purchases coming up from the police department.
We have, I don't think there will be any in December. We have some remodel projects, but those probably aren't going to happen until January, after the first of the year.
So we'll see them in the next couple of weeks then, or the next month. Or maybe the bills won't come through till.
Yeah, it probably will be a couple of months before bills would come forward.
Okay. Personnel issues.
So we are currently at 95 officers, so we're 10 short. We have 2 people that are leaving at the very beginning of January, so we'll be down 2 more, and there are a couple of people who are in the final stages of hiring processes with other agencies. So I would expect probably sometime in January we might lose a couple of more.
Okay. We don't. That's it for police business then. Right now, we don't have anything under the old business. And how about CERT ARV deployment?
There were no deployments last month.
Okay. Then this is the point at which we will take public comment. And I would encourage people who speak today that if you are looking for specific answers or information, to also contact the mayor's office. And so I think Nikki or Nicole will unmute the public when it's your turn to speak, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yep, and I already have one individual, and I see others, and you'll get a confirmation message in time. But to start, the first person is Tassie Gennady. And you should have a request to unmute now.
Thank you so much. And you did very well with my last name. I did want to speak to the events in Seminary Park. I did think it was really apropos to bring up the optics, that there had been a meeting last week with, almost 300 people, in which they were talking about the tents and the proposed change to not camp during the day. And there was never in that meeting, any indication that the enforcement of the law, that you're right, that's been on the books, of no camping at night, would take place the very next night. And no one that I've spoken to who has been in that park did seem to know that it was coming, knew about that sort of prior, people going down there. Mayor Hamilton seemed to say that we didn't know people were camping in the parks, which I find hard to believe. So I think that's a difficult one. As far as the propane heaters, they were all attached to they were all tent rated, they're small space rated. They came from the community. When I went there at 12:30, I couldn't get any information from the police officer there as to where people had gone, as to where the belongings had gone, as to how we could redeem them. That all came out the next day. It seems that at the very least that could have been something that he could have said, so that, we could have started planning that night, of things that we could have done. And then finally, I just wanted to talk about the fact that no one wanted to take up shelter at Wheeler. There's a myriad number of reasons that people don't go to Wheeler, mostly having to do with their religious convictions. Wheelers and so if someone is LGBTQ, they may not feel comfortable there. There's also just a feeling that if you go to Wheeler, that you're going to be dosed with religion pretty heavily. And there's a reason that it's not always full, whereas Friends is. And I do hope that Shalom is on board, with talking to you all. I do think that there was a lot of trust that was broken in the community, which thought that maybe we had done some really good work the night before, and then the very next night it was stripped away. And I don't know if now saying that this enforcement is going to continue, does that mean that sweeps will start again? And I guess I would also hold up Denver as a place that is not perfect, but has approved campsites with facilities and caseworkers available to their unhoused community. So thank you so much.
I want to add something to what she said. So Wheeler was asked that night because they have the only low barrier shelter. Friends Place did have beds available that night, but they are not low barrier. And so that's one of the reasons. I understand the concerns about the religious aspect from Wheeler, and we have talked to them about that. And again, that's their mission. So, but they do have the only low barrier shelter that's available, and that's why they participated that night.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, I feel like that if they're getting city money, that maybe we need that there's something then the city can say, or that, also that everybody could have been on the same page prior to eviction. It just doesn't seem, it seemed like it happened really quickly after that Tuesday night meeting, that everything sort of all happened that very next day. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next I have Heather Lake.
Hello. I wanted to speak as well about Seminary Park. As far as the belongings being returned, I and a few friends went there to the Parks Department the next morning, and the only items these people owned, and all the tents, all their warm clothes, blankets, were basically thrown into a pile and just left. No care was taken to take care of these items, seeing as these people don't own a lot and it's difficult for them to get new items. I was really disgusted at how their belongings were treated. And the fact that they had one day when people have difficulty with transportation, when people have difficulty getting around to get their things, it just was really disheartening to, especially as someone who has been working hard to get things to people, warm things, to see the way they were treated, and that there was just no care taken in getting the items taken care of, getting them returned to the people. It just seemed like there was just like nobody cared what happened to their warm things. And it took us several hours to get everything, fixed up and taken to the park. So when people are saying that their things were just returned, that's not exactly what happened. And so I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Heather. Next on my list, I have Mark Teller.
Hi, my name is Mark Teller. I'm a board member of the Bloomington Homeless Coalition, and I do have a lot to say, and I'm going to let you guess what I'm going to talk about. First off, I'm going to elaborate on what Heather and Tassie have touched on. I want to be clear that damage was done to people's personal belongings. We had several tents that were unusable, and we had to actually really rally the community to get a lot of tents out to people to replace it. In addition to that, in the pile of belongings was somebody's insulin. Sit on that and think about it for a second. Luckily, we got this insulin back to the person, but that could have really been dangerous. These people would not have been able to receive all of their belongings if volunteers hadn't stepped up and grabbed it and put it in their trucks and brought it back to Seminary and called out names. I think this entire community owes those people that helped out a big thank you for kind of picking up their mess. As far as people being banned from beds, I know one person that was banned for having a packet of raisins opened at the wrong time. You mentioned violence, that were banned for not making their beds by the right time. These people are in wheelchairs, so they couldn't make their beds. Sit on that as well. What is wrong with our shelters that homeless people won't take a warm bed? Why don't we ask that instead of pointing fingers? And I would do my final thing. I was present during some of the warnings that Bloomington Police Department gave. Pack your bags, you're leaving soon. No date, no sympathy. Pack your bags, you're leaving soon. That's something one of the officers said the day before. We were left wondering what he meant. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next, I have Nicole Johnson.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello, I'm sorry. I hope everybody can hear me. I am unsure.
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. There are a few things I would like to say. The first is I understand that this okay. I would like to know why Bloomington Police Department chose to ignore the CDC guidelines regarding encampments and evict Seminary Square residents. I understand that this order was given by the city and that the city is stating that they were unaware that there were people living in those tents. Bloomington Police Department is not unaware that people are living in those tents. As public servants, it would seem to me that it is their responsibility to inform the city when they got this order to enforce of the CDC guidelines and the fact that individuals were indeed living in the tents. So that's the first question. I want to know why our public servants ignored the CDC guidelines and fulfilled this this order that the city indeed gave them. And then in addition to that, I would like to know how much the eviction cost and who paid for it, who paid for the BT bus driver, how much was spent on social service that night, and how did it really end up benefiting anyone? That's a really important question, because in the long run, how did this benefit anyone? You spoke of one person that went to Wheeler. Is that person still in Wheeler? You spoke to about three people who went to the Stride Center. What happened to those individuals? Did they receive any casework? Are they housed? And then I'm going to tell you right now that, like, and I think you said that 2 people got in their car and 1 walked away. Well, that adds up to like a handful of folks. And I can tell you that I was in the park that evening at about 12 or morning. It was after midnight. And I was still taking I was still taking individuals to other locations to be safe. We put the number has been corrected. It was 11 people from Seminary Park into the hotel for homeless program. So there's definitely more people that were affected than Chief Dekoff is suggesting. Also, I was one of the people, along with Heather, the another one of the people who spoke, that went down to the Parks Department and had to sort through these people's belongings. I actually just finished washing some of the wet clothes today, and we'll be returning it to the park tomorrow. So people still have not gotten all of their belongings. In addition to that, as far as Wheeler is concerned, and I'd like to echo the fact that there is a reason why those beds are empty, and I would like to ask where Wheeler Missions Women's Shelter is, and I know that the city gave them over $50,000 worth of CARES money. And that was supposed to be open for November 1, and we are now 6 weeks past November 1, and we still don't have those beds. So I'm pretty sure the city does have a responsibility to make sure that their funds are used as the agency promised. And I feel like money is being thrown around left and right, but it's landing everywhere except where the problem is. And I think that's because nobody wants to actually center the voices of the homeless individuals. And
I'm going to jump in for a second. This is Attorney Chris Wheeler with the City of Bloomington, and I want to remind the public that you are being limited to 3 minutes. And ma'am, your 3 minutes has now expired.
Thank you so much.
Nicole, thanks for your comments. And I would just encourage you to continue to follow up with the mayor's office. A lot of your questions specifically about costs and things are not information that we receive.
Next, I have Nathan Mutchler.
Yes, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, thank you. So I'd like to use my 3 minutes to really try to talk about what's happening here. I'm going to ask everyone on this meeting, whether you're a police chief or a public servant or a commission member or even just someone listening in, to take a moment and think about your house. Maybe it's messy, maybe it's clean, probably messy like mine. You've got things you love, things you hate, things that you don't know what to do with. And thank God we live in Bloomington, Indiana, away from the coast, where we don't get hurricanes. We're not a plain state where we don't get tornadoes. So for you and me, there's probably not a chance that an act of God will come through and totally upend our life. But not for the people that live in Seminary Park. That night, it was a hurricane directed by the city of Bloomington, the police department, the mayor's office, by our community that came in and wrecked these people's lives. Now, I think everyone here is probably old enough to remember where they were on September 11th. I was taking the ISAP, so maybe that'll date me. Everyone remembers September 11th. And every day in this country, COVID-19 kills a September 11th worth of people. So your house has been destroyed in a tornado or a hurricane, and it's September 11th. And just think about that. Just think about the things that you love in your house, your possessions, your belongings, your family, being destroyed on September 11th by an act of God. Think about that. Now, to top that off, there's social services come up. You know, we're not talking about SWAT teams, people with military style gear. We're talking about people whose job is to maybe help you. And they tell you the only bed for you, the only place to go right now is somewhere where they will tell you you will burn in hell for eternity because of who you are. Let's think about that. I think I have about 30 seconds. I'd like to take that time to really imagine in the same day, a hurricane, September 11th, and your only choice for a warm bed being told you will burn in hell. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you. Next, I have Alex Goodlad.
Hello, can you all hear me? Okay, great. So I think you got, everyone's kind of piece of their minds as far as like how this impacts them, I guess. And so like, I hope that you sympathize with what they have to say about what happened from, the perspective of someone without a home. And what I want to sort of bring up is the CDC guidelines and sort of detail what they're about, because there's kind of we're kind of speaking past each other as far as what it means to like we're saying sort of like there's two sides with two narratives on what it means to have, I guess, cleanliness and public safety and whatnot. One side says, hey, look, like the CDC guidelines say not to clear out encampments. And then there's another side saying, but we need the parks to be clean. So, okay, how do we achieve making the parks clean? Well, this is what the CDC guidelines suggest, which is to ensure nearby restroom facilities that have functional water taps are stocked with hand hygiene materials, bath tissue, and remain open to people experiencing homelessness 24 hours a day. And in Seminary Park, yeah, I know there's like a small trash can, but that's really about it. There should be, there needs to be, I mean, Chief Dekoff was talking about this earlier, but there needs to be coordination between those that are out at the park and then those that are trying to reconcile with the rules. And right now, this communication clearly isn't happening, because on one hand, you have Chief Dekoff right now on record saying that there's people living or did live, they're trying to live in Seminary Park with tents, with heaters, trying to live through the cold. On the other hand, Mayor Hamilton is on record in a December 14th article, which, I'm trying to spread the word about what he said, which is that there actually is no encampments. They're not like really living there. And he's using that as a PR excuse to say that, oh, we're following CDC guidelines. But let's work together and communicate in a way that's effective for everyone by trying to just trying to communicate. I know on the city's end, they have to install the bathrooms and actually like come up with a policy that works with CDC guidelines. But I think what the police have to do is to communicate better, and so that there isn't this contradiction everywhere. This is my time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next, I have Martin Law.
There we are.
I think Martin, oh, there he is.
Yes, sorry about that. I lost the unmute button for a moment. So thank you for taking time to hear public comment on this. It was nice to hear at the beginning, or not the beginning, but when the issue of the eviction at Seminary Park was brought up, that even Chief Dekoff was gesturing to the fact that that entire operation had a lot of problems. It was not done well, and I don't imagine anyone would say that they were happy with what happened there. And that was good to hear. It was good to hear that everyone recognizes there was a big problem. And some of the problems that Chief Dekoff pointed to were things like, we don't know, he said, we don't know why people don't go to shelters, and indicated that was the thing that needed to be looked into. And that's encouraging. He indicated that there was miscommunication about when or whether an eviction would take place. And Mark Keller, I believe, spoke to that just a moment ago too. And there were questions about kind of what was the benefit of having done this. And so it's great to hear that that this committee is thinking about those questions and isn't just kind of blindly going forward thinking, we did it, we did a great job, but that you're really considering what went wrong. And so, I also wanted to point to a couple of things that previous people have talked to and kind of try to amplify those. First of all, the issue I think Tassie brought up of the sense of broken trust, that in order for public safety to exist, the community has to trust those who make policy and those who enforce those policies. And this is an indication, again, as Chief Dekoff said, there were a lot of problems with what happened here, and the result was broken trust. And also thinking about things that Nicole and Heather said, that we need to think about who ends up picking up the tab for those mistakes that were made in that eviction. It wasn't just a one-time mistake, but it had repercussions for the next several days for community members. So community members ended up cleaning up for the mistakes that were made with that operation. And I really hope that those are things that public safety thinks about when they do things in the future. Because you're adding burden to the community by making these kinds of mistakes. The last thing I wanted to say is going to try to amplify something that came up. And again, I know that you all are not the Parks Commission, but something that came up in that Parks Commission meeting. One of the first people who spoke was a man who was living in Seminary Park, and he said he talked about all the things that he was doing to try to improve that space, and said, if you work with us, we would love to work with you. So that is a community member, someone who's not been served particularly well by the community, given that he is, he was camping in a park where he didn't want to be, saying, we will pick up some of the slack if you meet us halfway, which is more than, community members are actually required to do. City officials ought to be working for us, not with us. But we have people who are living in Seminary Park saying, we will meet you halfway. We'll do part of your job if you will help us out as well. And I think this also goes to some of the things that Chief Dekoff said, having everyone pulling in the same direction. But as a few other commenters have said, very often the city does not seem to consider, when it considers everyone working together, doesn't consider homeless people, doesn't consider people who are actually being misserved the most. It thinks about working with other organizations and with itself, and maybe other I don't know, more quote unquote respectable community members. But I don't think there's a lot of effort put in to actually working with the people who are directly affected by this sort of thing. So as you all think about, again, the things that went wrong with the eviction at Seminary Park last week, and as you think about how you're going to improve in the future, which again, I'm very glad that you're thinking about, think about how you can work with and not against the people who are directly impacted by your decisions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next I have Danielle Bird.
Hello, my name is Danielle Bird, and I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to this. I also want to thank the members of the Board of Public Safety for giving their time to participate in this board. So I just want to talk about my reaction. I'm a social worker, as is Maquiba, I understand, Ms. Reese. And I just want to highlight, I think, something that she said and what I'm hearing from a lot of folks is the best way for us to know about the needs of the people who are houseless is to get that information from them directly. Even as a social worker that practiced in the community for years, I thought I knew best, and I didn't until I was able to really listen to those people. So while you may be talking to social service providers or DROs or other people, I feel like it's really important to center the voices of those who are experiencing houselessness because you learn a lot. And I'm learning a lot from folks who are directly in that park and working with folks. I just want to highlight that we have an amazing amount of mutual aid happening right now. These folks, so this action not only harmed the people, this was not for public safety. I know that's what this is highlighted for, but this didn't get anybody safe. This caused harm. Not only did it harm the individuals who were displaced, it harmed the community members who have donated money, time, food, just care to these members of our houseless community. And people scrambled around. They were up all night trying to help people find their things, get resettled. This was harm. This was not help. I'll highlight, people talked about CDC guidance on encampments. I want to mention that. Also, this destroys trust in those social service agencies. We have people spending time in the park trying to build relationships, trying to connect people with services. The things that I heard from houseless folks was, that they don't want to have anything to do with Centerstone. They don't want to have anything. And I had to spend time cleaning up conversation about social workers, because the social workers politely asked people. I mean, the social workers were in the park. I'm a social worker. I don't care for those types of actions to be associated with social work. So it hurt the social work community and our abilities to help people. Also, there are some good things that happen in that park. We hook people up with testing and medical care. Those folks are, the trust is destroyed. Also, we have to figure out before we do this, what are the barriers to utilization of those beds? Some people don't want to be in close proximity with others with COVID. You can't socially distance in these locations many times. You're still in a congregate living situation. Also, you've alienated the Democratic Party leadership. They've put out a statement against this action. That's not good for unity in our community. We really need to broaden our perspectives of what public safety means. I know this board has particular tasks that they need to accomplish, but I just would like to encourage folks on this board to view community safety in a bit of a different way and center those voices of folks who are experiencing, the greatest amount of harm in our community. So thank you again for your time and for your work on this.
Thank you. Next, I have Kay Goodman.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Thank you for having this meeting. I really appreciate it. My comment tonight is that I do work for a local social service agency, but I am representing the houseless tonight. I would like to say I do feel that this is the exact reason that we need, and it has been voted in, a public safety commission. Because what could have happened is if we had a current public safety commission, maybe the mayor and the team and you who that knew about this could have came to the commission and did some outreach, and we could have got that in place, and maybe it would have not been so traumatizing. The brain science behind trauma is the reason, and one of the top reasons, our houseless community could not make the decision to go probably where it was the safest. They were disoriented, and your brain, as we've learned in the last 20 to 25 years, the brain science behind trauma is that you shut down. You can't think. You don't understand why you can't think, but you can't. So I just wanted to give that, and I hope that if something like this comes up, and I'm hoping we can get this Public Safety Commission up and running as soon as possible. I've not really heard much about that, so I'm hoping that happens as soon as possible. And the other thing that I would like to say is that I have been in communication with the Stride Center, and it is wonderful. The thing is that they didn't know about it. And so they felt like, the police, and speaking again of public safety, they felt like the police were just trying to take them somewhere and they didn't know where that was. So I would think that if we had had the Public Safety Commission going, Stride Center maybe could have done some outreach somehow, and then this could have been a discussion about how to do this without so much trauma. So thank you for listening. Excuse me. And that is just, I have a lot to say about it, but I think tonight that this is the most pertinent. We do have to work together, and I do think that we can, but it needs to be fairly quickly. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kay. Next, I have Denise Valkyrie.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. There's been a lot of great speakers here, and I'm glad that you're having this public commentary portion. I live here in Bloomington. I'm in the Broadview neighborhood. We have a few homeless people, or not homeless people, people experiencing homelessness that live in our neighborhood as well. The whole town is traumatized over this. I'm going to say that right up front. The whole town is traumatized over this. It's the holiday season. It's cold out. All we knew when we went into that meeting was that people's tents were going to be taken away from them and they were going to be cold. At the end of the meeting, we thought that they were going to be left alone because the CDC guidelines say leave them put. I'm not upset with the police department. They did what they were supposed to do, but they should have pushed back against the mayor because this put our community at greater harm. We have 1 to 2 people dying every day, not from being homeless, but from COVID. And now we've added people that went to shelters into that mix too, where they were safe inside of their tents, where they were safe outside. And if we're going to move them, we have to have a place to move them to. And that's going to come under the purveyance, I believe, of this board, of helping this community find a place to provide separate housing for people experiencing homelessness. At the end of World War II, they put Quonset huts in Dun Meadow. Why can't we do something like that in People's Park, or not People's Park, in the Seminary Square, where they're already staying, where folks are already staying, where it's close to the bus stop, where it's close to their medical services, where it's close to their food and their other services. The history of how communities have dealt with people experiencing homelessness has changed very little in centuries. It's time for us as intelligent people to do something completely different than what we've done before. And I believe that we can do that, and we can do it with the help of our social services agencies and our police agencies and our community, because we're caring, good people. Thank you. That's my time.
Ready. Thank you, Denise. Next, I have Shelby Query.
Hi, yeah. I'd like to use my time to tell a quick story about something that I've witnessed. A lot of us were talking about the mistrust that people who are experiencing homelessness have.
Shelby, can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
That's a little bit better, yeah.
Like I said, I'd like to tell a quick story about something that I saw at Seminary Park and to contribute to this idea of untrusting social services, especially public services in Bloomington. I was at Seminary Park and I had witnessed a man who was unconscious, and I went over and tried to wake him up. And he was not responding. I could tell that there was breathing, but it was abnormal. His fingers were discolored. So I decided to call the resource officer, in which they dispatched me, one resource officer and the ambulance. When the ambulance arrived, they were not quick to get out. They were not in any hurry to leave their truck. And this was very, very, very disheartening for me to watch. And excuse me if I get emotional about talking about it. As the ambulance got out of their truck, they went over to the unconscious man, and the resource officer flipped the man over to his back and wrestled with his clothes to see where his wallet was, and shook him to see if he would wake up. And I'm not sure what the protocols are, but soon you'll be hearing that this is not part of the protocol. But the man was not responsive and continued to not be responsive to any of the people who were at the park who came to help him. And so once the people realized that this man was not going to wake up, they brought out the stretcher from the truck and they lifted him up by his shirt and his pants. His neck was not safe. His head was hanging from his shirt because that's how he was being held. And his pants were actually pulled down, so his genitals were exposed. So I'm not sure whether you or I have the same exact ideologies of what trust means, but for me to see that made me lose trust in public safety. And that's very disturbing. And I know I'm coming close to my time, but I'd like to ask each and every one of you to think about that story and think about whether or not that was a college student, if that would be the same exact protocol, as they are seen differently in this community. It is disheartening, it is disgusting, and it is absolutely not okay to be happening in our community. And those are the things that contribute to this ideology of what trust is in this community, especially when it comes to underserved communities here in Bloomington. That's my time. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the last individual that I have. If there's anyone else who would like to speak, please use the raise your hand function or indicate so in the chat.
I'd like to say that one of the things, one of the issues moving forward that this board has grappled with a little bit in the past and that we'll have to deal with going forward is really what is the scope of this board's reach. And it can be, I'm not sure because it at times seems to be changing, but historically, homelessness has not been an issue that we've grappled with. We provide oversight to the police and the fire department, but we are not involved in policy making regarding these issues. So I appreciate all the comments tonight. We're a board that has lived in this community a long time and cares very deeply about the homeless issue and Seminary Park. And it's an issue that the board will address in future meetings about the scope of this purview and how we want to move forward.
And I'd like to say something too. One thing that I want to really reiterate is that although we may not be a part of policy or anything like that for the moment. Yes, we do provide that oversight. But the thing is that we also provide our lived experiences. And I get so moved to a little bit of anger. I like the fact that people think that just because we're on this board, that it means that we don't have experiences, right? So I'm not going to go through the list of things that I've been through, me and my family, and why and how I got here. But we have lived experiences. I have lived experiences. I understand being marginalized, oppressed, right? And so I think that that's really frustrating about this community, is that they think that only certain groups of people really understand what's going on in our community, which I disagree with, because I won't speak for anyone else within the board, but we also, like Susan was saying, we're moved to compassion. Like, we're like, okay, we want to make sure that the community is just as safe. That's why that's why majority of us is starting on this board, is because I know why I'm on this board. I make sure to make it a point to connect with the Black community in Bloomington, for the people that want to connect with me, so that I can raise those issues and talk to the chief of firefighters and talk to the chief of police. So I just want to make sure that individuals understand that it shouldn't be a singular story, and to not discredit individuals that are actually that have lived experiences, because I don't think that helps with anything. But that.
Luis or Kim, do you want to add anything?
No, nothing further, no. I think it would be good in January to readdress the scope, the mission of this again, particularly since we have a new member.
Yes. Luis?
Yeah, this is one of those moments. This is really frustrating for many reasons, including what Maquiba said. I speak for myself. I completely understand. When I read it in the paper, it was because I had the same reaction. I followed the vote and Tuesday, whenever it was, next day, in fact, it wasn't even that. Somebody said something on an email, and I thought to myself, what are the Herald Times? For reasons I will not say much more about, but I went to the Beacon, I believe, and there it was. It's a big story, and I thought, oh my goodness, you have got to be kidding me. I didn't understand. And in the end, the frustration, at least for me, is that this board, and I think the same as with this new board that I read about in the paper, this board by statute only has so many things that it can do. And it's not what people think it is. Same, we don't have the authority. We're not policymaking bodies. We're not entrusted with creating policy in Bloomington. We're entrusted to come once a month and say, basically ask questions to the chiefs and make sure that they do what we hope they should be doing. And as Maquiba said, we go to our communities. I belong to many groups in Bloomington, and I ask questions, and I tell them, I am here, come talk to them and tell them what you want to tell them. They're here to listen to you. So when these things happen, and again, it was frustrating because I feel deeply and I want to help. And what I intend to do is follow up, not with this board, because I don't even know where we begin here, but rather with the people. My first reaction is whoever created that policy about surely green space in Bloomington, surely there's a way. And again, I say that not knowing anything. I am not an expert. I don't know. And I know that I don't know. But surely there has to be a way, whether it's Seminary Square, Seminary Park, surely there's got to be a way out of this, or a way to make it better. I don't know what that is. But here we are. And it's just a terrible situation. And it's been like that for some time. And it's all we can do is move forward and try to not let it happen again. and everyone who came. Thank you for coming. I for one, really deeply appreciate it.
Okay, we don't have any additional comments from the public. So I will take a motion.
Can I add one last thing? Susan, I want to thank you for your service to the Board of Safety. This is your last meeting. The past couple of years have not been easy for the board. And so I appreciate all of your time and your dedication to the board and to both the police and fire departments. So thank you. Good luck. If you need anything from us in the future, don't hesitate to ask. And again,
Chief, that's
Here. We all.
Thank you so
that's a nice save, Chief. I appreciate that because yes, thank
Well,
you,
thank
Susan,
you.
for your.
I will still be around, and I hope to see you all around town.
Yes, thank you for your leadership, President Susan. I'm definitely going to text you a couple times.
Okay, well, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. Stay safe.
Bye.